Now, across Texas, the issue is.
I'm Greg Grugan in Houston.
I'm Stephen Dial in Dallas.
I'm Rudy Koski in Austin, and this is Texas, the issue is.
It's almost like an alternative universe. In a matter of months, what was once utter, extended, and too often deadly chaos on America's border with Mexico has all but disappeared. And now what could well be another 180-degree swing. Houston area Congressman Dan Crenshaw telling Texas the issue is Mexico's new government is embracing the prospect of a genuine partnership with the U.S. in a truly joint effort to crush the drug and human trafficking cartels.
There is a true terrorist insurgency in a country that is right on our border. That's just something we can't accept as a security issue.
Congressman and former Navy SEAL Dan Crenshaw is describing the heavily armed, deeply resourced Mexican drug cartels, responsible for trafficking the deadly fentanyl, which has claimed hundreds of thousands of American lives. For the past 18 months, the Texas Republican has led a task force aimed at neutralizing the clear, present, and continuing danger the criminal operations pose.
You just can't have a Mexico that is a narco state. That's not good for America. It's our biggest trading partner. It's right on our border. We have an interest in having a prosperous and safer Mexico that doesn't have to deal with things like mass graves. I mean, just recently, you can start going down the list of atrocities that you see down there, and those affect Americans too.
And for the first time in recent history, Mexico's new administration wholeheartedly agrees. Crenshaw tells Texas the issue is President Claudia Sheinbaum is looking to forge an unprecedented partnership to dismantle and potentially eradicate the cartels.
There's a new administration in Mexico, which has opened up a huge amount of opportunity. They want to partner with us in a way that Mexico has not wanted to partner with us before. But they need help, right? They don't have close air support assets like we would have. They don't have enough Black Hawks for transport. They don't have enough intelligence and ISR platforms. We need to have a program where we deliver this.
To cement the alliance, Crenshaw is crafting a measure known as the North America First Security Assistance Initiative. Money, training, intel, and equipment to neutralize an ongoing threat responsible for immense human carnage each and every year on both sides of the border. Perhaps most critical, Crenshaw says he's got the full backing of President Donald J. Trump.
He put it in very simple terms, we want to kill them, right? And, the thing is that's the Trump administration's position, and that's also the Mexican administration's position. My job in Congress is to make sure that we're developing that strategy, and that's what I've been working on for a year and a half, is that counterinsurgency strategy. It doesn't just involve the Department of Defense. It involves all levels of government, the intelligence community, the law enforcement community, from DEA to the FBI to the DOJ.
Crenshaw, who served combat tours in both Iraq and Afghanistan, emphasized the critical, time-sensitive nature of embracing a new level of cooperation with Mexico's chief executive and the forces she commands.
There's a long history between the United States and Mexico. It's not like working with Colombia, like we have for the last 30-plus years, where they welcomed U.S. support. That has not been the case with Mexico, but it has changed under this administration, and we've got to walk through that door of opportunity.
Yeah, my one-word description, opportunity. Stephen, what's your word?
I'm going to be a little cautious. I'm going to say uncertain.
Okay, Rudy, lay it on me.
You guys, considering what the Mexican president and rejecting the offer from the president just a few days ago, I thought whiplash. Then hearing what the congressman said, I thought unbelievable. But I decided to go with untouchables.
All right, stay with us. The Fox Texas Trio returns on the other side of this break with what I'm predicting will be an intriguing discussion. Welcome back. It sounds almost too good to be true. The host nation and home base of multiple insidious drug cartels suddenly embracing the prospect of a lethal partnership with the United States aimed at debilitating and destroying these ruthless criminal operations. Rudy, Congressman Crenshaw, not known for his optimistic disposition, is genuinely thrilled about the prospect of this alliance as just what the doctor ordered. You believe him?
Well, any operation, Greg, I think would have to be a lesson learned operation. You know, remember back in 2006, Mexico launched a cartel targeted military action. The cartels responded with a major escalation in violence, targeting law enforcement officers, targeting military personnel. There are reports that entire police departments in Mexico resigned out of fear. Government officials, political candidates, journalists were also assassinated in broad daylight. Now, granted, some cartel leaders have been jailed since then, some killed by rival gangs, but the crime organizations, they remain, which is why my word is a throwback to that Kevin Costner movie, Untouchables. Here's my point. Elliot Ness didn't get Capone with a gun. He got him with pen and paper. And even then, that tax evasion charge only muted the Chicago mob, didn't eliminate them. Maybe instead of a shadow war with smart bombs and smart bullets, we can touch the untouchables with a computer keyboard, a smart strike by launching a more aggressive asset seizure campaign. Take all their bank accounts, then take their toys, homes, ranches, which would be confrontational and a problem, but their resources greatly reduced by then, right? Break them at the bank, Greg.
Good stuff, Rudy. Stephen, you heard the ominous Trump rhetoric on the campaign trail about wiping out the cartels with or without Mexican government cooperation. Clearly, working in concert with President Sheinbaum is an option with far less collateral risk in terms of global and regional perception.
Definitely. It sounds good in name. We have to see what that action will be. And I totally agree with the points that Rudy made in terms of it has to be strategic. And a way to be strategic, of course, is to work with that country, work with Mexico, the country where these gangs and cartels are being housed in. Not saying that the country is housing them, but that's where their home bases are. And so it may have to be two-pronged. It may have to be a physical sense and, like Rudy's saying, on a paper sense of hurting them where it hurts the most. They are built on money. Yes, there is violence and things like that. Yes, they make money from drugs and weapons, but hurting them in other ways. And so I said uncertain because, yes, on paper, everything sounds good, but everything doesn't go how it goes on paper sometimes. So we'll have to wait and see, but this is a big step if it moves forward.
All right, Rudy, to make this work, Crenshaw is going to need executive and congressional support on multiple levels, with substantial funding and intelligence assets topping the list. Do you anticipate pushback given the enormous ongoing damage inflicted by the cartels?
Yeah, Greg, you know, the United States doesn't have a great record with jungle warfare, right? There will be pushback, huge pushback to any military operation, full scale or even black ops. Last week, you know, we heard from Trump border czar Tom Homan, who wants to bring the big hammer. Sounded really strong. He noted all the lives that have been lost to fentanyl, and he's right about that. Those losses are tragic and they demand action. But I don't think the public will equate those deaths to an armed attack, a bloody war. Now, I'm not saying that we can't or we shouldn't hit the cartels hard, and some muscle flexing, tough talk, you know, that's not bad either. But the reviews that I've read from military and political analysts say action needs to be coordinated and strategic, building off of what Stephen just said. Mexico has proven to send mixed messages, and their past crackdowns, the lasting impact, not lasting very long. That's why my initial reaction to what the congressman said, sadly, is unbelievable.
Yeah, trust but verify. Stephen, if you are a Democrat and hear Crenshaw talking about an unprecedented partnership opportunity with Mexico against the cartels, how do you react? Do you instinctively oppose as a matter of partisanship, or do you jump on board as a matter of pragmatism?
We've talked about this ad nauseum for weeks. Democrats have to find their lane, right? Find the way of them still appeasing their base, but also finding a way to work with the other side, and this could be one of those doors. Now, we are talking about something ultra specific, right? Cracking down on cartels and gangs. You know, I think Democrats, you will find very few that would be against that topic, or none, right? And so it's all in the language. It's all in the presentation. If Crenshaw and other Republicans come at Democrats saying this is a narrow scope focus that we're trying to do, I think it'll work. But if you're talking about immigration and everything else, I think that can muddy the waters.
Yeah, but I'm still concerned, Stephen. You know, here on the state level with the Democrats, we're having a hard time passing bail reform. You know, and that's, you know, I just don't know. You hope. I just don't know. All right, the issue up next, how medical marijuana advocates and those selling hemp products have found themselves at odds under the Capitol dome. Welcome back to The Issue Is, and the issue up for discussion now is a legislative Pandora's box. The use of medical marijuana began back in 2018, and state lawmakers now considering legislation to expand the Texas Compassionate Use Act. An effort to do that failed in the last session 2 years ago, and the reboot now seems to be tangled up in a way in a separate cannabis-related debate. The House and Senate are at odds over whether or not to regulate the sale of THC products like gummies and hemp-infused beverages, or to just outright ban them. Nico Richardson, the CEO of Texas Original, one of 3 licensed medical marijuana dispensaries, spoke to me about this dual issue and why he believes the Texas hemp law needs to go back in the box.
A lot of people's eyes are open in the last 2 years about the real need for a viable medical market in Texas, just the number of people that we've helped already over the last 6-7 years. That's really come to the forefront. And I think people have seen how out of control the other side's gotten. So at least we're having the real conversation now. So, I mean, our view is just logically, you have to increase regulations on one to make it safe. And you probably have to relax regulations on the other to make it accessible to the people that need it the most.
So is it a safety issue now? Is that really the next step?
So it's completely, as far as we're concerned, completely unregulated. Our program has basically dual testing, or double jeopardy testing, where we have to test all of our own products internally. Every batch that goes out the door gets tested for potency, heavy metals, pesticides, microbials. And then the DPS actually comes in and takes random samplings from our inventory and sends those out of state to get tested. And then we have to match results and make sure they work. That's a huge burden and a necessary one, especially when you have immunocompromised patients like we do in our program. You can't have contaminated products. But right now, there's this facade of a regulated industry because you can buy it anywhere in Texas at hemp stores. But the reality is those products are being tested are not being tested.
Which bill do you like out of the Senate on SB 3? Do you want the total ban or the regulatory aspect? Which side do you support, and which side is more realistic?
I don't understand how you start to regulate 9,000 licenses. There's no recreational cannabis market in the country that has 9,000 retail licenses. I mean, California's got like 1,200 retail marijuana dispensaries, right? New York's got less than that. How do you have 9,000 in the state of Texas, and how do you regulate that? I mean, just the agency you'd have to build up to go in and to make sure all those people are selling, properly regulated products, you can't do it. So the first thing they have to do if they want a regulated industry is shrink the retail count down to something that actually matches our population when you look at the rest of the country, which basically means wiping out 90% of the retail in the state of Texas to begin with. And nobody wants to do that on the hemp side. You need to start over, get rid of all these actors, and then issue licenses for a recreational program.
But what does that do to businesses like yours? Does that eliminate the need for yours, the medicinal side?
Likely. That's typically what happens in other markets. Although, a lot of other markets now, places like Colorado, have sort of gone back and said they regret opening up their recreational program to the extent that they did. They should have slowly expanded medical and then made sure there was a reason for being for medical before they opened up some sort of more regulated recreational side. Let's get this to the people that need it the most right now through the right channels, and then make sure that it is over, the dispensation and medications overseen by a doctor. That is where we need to start.
And we will start our discussion with that. Nico Richardson wants to go back to the beginning. He supports the original SB 3 that came out of the Senate, which bans most THC products. Greg, I frame this as a Pandora's box issue. How's this debate playing out in Houston?
Rudy, there are 5 full-blown head shops within a mile of my own house, and they've all been in business for multiple years now. I suspect if you accurately polled folks here in the Bayou City, it would reflect statewide surveys that favor full legalization for adult recreational use. The fact is, that's what exists more or less right now, with 8,000 largely unregulated over-the-counter outlets slinging a variety of THC products, some responsibly, but most not, which makes the interview we just watched even more intriguing and significant. An expert who knows the genuine value of marijuana for many people, but says the Wild West scenario we've allowed to unfold needs to be completely blown up. Now, on the flip side, a return to complete prohibition is just pushes all these synthetic cannabinoids into the black market. Folks, the genie is out of the bottle, so to answer your question, I think most people say this time around, tax and regulate the hell out of it and drive the shady players out of business. Rudy?
Yes, status quo just can't remain. Advocates for the THC hemp industry, they've said that. They claim that they will accept state regulations in order to stay open, but Richardson believes it's not possible to properly check all of the different kinds of products currently available, all the different shops. The Compromise Committee substitute now to SB 3 at first glance may seem to be a big bowl of regulation spaghetti. Stephen, have you heard anything about a partial walkback? Keep the hemp beverages maybe under TABC, shut down the rest? How's that?
Right, and I agree with Greg. The genie's already out of the bottle, so how do you get some of it back in, right? I think there's going to have to be some type of concessions. We already know that there's an appetite in both the House and the Senate to do something, but I think this may be one of those topics that they're going to have to, one side is going to walk away with not everything that they want up here in North Texas, just like in Houston, just like in Austin. These stores are everywhere. Have I been inside of them? Yes, for research purposes, not for personal purposes. And there's no way if there's regulations for every single product to be checked. I mean, I walked in a store 6 months ago and there's tons of different products than there were 2 years ago when these types of stores started really popping up in the DFW area. So regulation will be hard. It will let a lot of things slip through the cracks, but I think that might have to be a concession that the other side may have to take.
Greg, you know what this reminds me of is the old Betamax versus VHS battle. Somebody's got to lose here. Who's going to lose here?
Yeah, kind of like Stephen said, if the industry wants to survive, then they accept almost oppressive regulation, like a one and you're done penalty for selling to minors or selling products that are demonstrably above clearly established THC levels. You fund this extensive regulatory oversight by taxing a major chunk of the $8 billion in reported revenue this industry is sucking up here in Texas. The strong and the legit will survive while the shady characters will be gradually culled out. Of course, all this depends on whether Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick will accept anything short of an outright ban. And by all indications, Rudy and Stephen, he's not budging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's testimony from the parents of kids who have taken this stuff from these stores that turns out to be toxic and it destroys their lives. So compelling. But, I spoke to Ag Commissioner Sid Miller, and, he is all for regulating the products. And when I asked him, do you think this opens door to just legalizing marijuana like Colorado? He said, yeah, he's okay with it as long as it's regulated. So, Stephen, polling shows that, right? We talked about this. Is this where we're heading?
I mean, if you talk to the voters, definitely. I mean, this is what certain Republicans don't want. They know if there was a public vote, we'll have legal marijuana in Texas tomorrow. They don't want that. And so we'll have to wait and see how things play out. Now, we have one more segment coming up talking about some other issues that are getting on our nerves. We'll see you right after this break. All right, we are back. This segment is called Weve Got Issues. I'm going to say two really quick. The first one, the new Pope. Pope Leo, Villanova grad. Knicks star player Jalen Brunson, used to be Dallas Mavericks, Villanova. Is there some divine intervention happening in the NBA Finals? All right, my real issue, all of these name changes, right? You got bases changing names. Now lawmakers are talking about Gulf of America, Gulf of Mexico, yada, yada, yada. My issue is, does this really matter? One. And two, Should an executive order change that, or should it be the vote of the people? I'm going to just leave that up in the air. Rudy Koski, what's your issue?
All right, Stephen, I'm going to follow your dribbling and go a little basketball. A few days ago, you know, the Eastern Conference Championship starting in a semi starting up with the Celtics blowing twice 2 20-point leads, allowing the Knicks, the evil Knickerbockers, to bounce back and take a 2-0 lead early on. What's up with that? But then there's one other issue that I think is an emerging issue. Middle of the week, the House passed a bill that outlaws balloon releases. That's, you know, your kids releasing memorial balloon releases. It's littering, super littering, the House says, and we're going to come get you. That, I think, is going to be an emerging issue. That's mine.
Greg Gergen.
All right, I'm going to make this fast. Ask Pope Leo for forgiveness first. This is called Survival Island. We take all of the chronic homeless to Survival Island. On one side of the island, we have health care, drug treatment, mental health attention. On the other side of the island, we have all the grain alcohol and fentanyl anyone would want to consume. You make a choice. You make a choice. You can go over there, or you can stay over here and be reintegrated back into society. I think it's a pragmatic plan, very libertarian. But this chronic decades of misery for all of us with the homeless, come on. That's what I got.
I'm praying for you, Greg. I'm praying for you. Peace, brother, peace.
Forgive me.
That would be an interesting island.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
Netflix
all
series,
the time
maybe.
that we have. That could be. All right, guys. That's all the time we have. To see this episode or any of our past ones, go to our station's YouTube channels.
And of course, keep the conversation going on social media.
You know, things are winding down at the state capitol with a lot of big issues hanging in the balance and a special session hanging in the balance. We'll bring you up to date on that next week. And don't forget to let us know what you think the issue is.